Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jared Gray with my co-host Jordan Rains and the Dynasty Chef Steve with expandtheboxscore.com. Doing our Senior Bowl recap. The guys just got back and we got to cover some of this stuff. So, how are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Good, man. Happy to be home. Had a good time down there though, and
Mm-hmm.
definitely saw and learned a lot about some of these incoming guys.
It was an intense experience.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Yeah, especially, Steve, you had like a 14-hour drive, which is
Yeah, I think that was the most intense part of
crazy.
it. I ended up I ended up getting pulled over on the way down there because I was really tired, and I kind of like this cop comes off the shoulder and comes right at me. I swear, and it was like a missile. He was coming at me, and he freaked me out a little bit, and I kind of swerved over at him a little bit, and he just comes right behind me and just saw that I was out of state, and he was like pulled me right over.
That doesn't sound like a very fun way to end the trip.
No, I was almost there.
Yeah.
I was so close, and I was like, "Geez, I'm so close, officer." And he ended up writing me a ticket still.
Well, sounds like you deserve it. You try to swerve into his ass.
I didn't try to swerve into him. He was coming at me like a missile.
Mm,
The Alabama cop, he had me pegged. He was like, "I'm gonna get this guy right here."
So he already had his eye on you.
He did.
But yeah, it was a
Well,
good.
Alabama did play Michigan. They figured just get one more over on you.
That's right. That's what it was. I was like, I'm not even a fan of Michigan, man. Maybe I should have had a big
That's
Buckeye
hilarious.
sticker on the side of my truck.
Oh, that probably would have went worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems like guys had a good 4 days. I know Jordan, you were there from Monday to Thursday. Uh, so obviously, this is a big group amount of guys to talk about, and we're going to try to narrow it down as much as possible.
Yeah.
We're going to mediate, different groups, and obviously, I've looked at a lot of videos, and
Yeah.
it's just crazy to me.
There was a
it
lot
was
of
just
good, a lot of good players and a lot of good people covering it too. I mean, we were probably the least of everyone there. I mean, honestly,
hmm
there were some big names. It was nice just to be able to talk to different guys too and see what they were seeing and compare. Like who are you watching right now? Like when you have a big group of 8 or 9 guys, I mean, everybody's looking the same direction, and you're honed in on 1 or 2 people, and it's good to test the waters around you and see. Um, I guess we can just go ahead and jump right in. I spent most of my time watching the defensive line. I was kind of just taken with them immediately when I got there. Day one, we did media before we even went to practice. So at the media, I kind of got to talk to some of the guys, which we're going to put the Bradlee Anae interview at the end of this episode, guys. Forgot to say that in the intro, um, which was one of my favorite interviews and one of the longer ones we did. But we just talked to a lot of the defensive linemen. We ended up I talked to Kinlaw before Steve got there. We talked to Bradlee Anae, which you got on video. Travis Gibson was a guy that I kind of liked. It was from Tulsa. Talked to him. Um, Hamilton, talked to him for a little bit, and Laurel as well. So we talked to all those guys. We didn't get to talk to everybody. Obviously you kind of have to pick your spots. There's a lot of people there doing the exact same thing, wanting to talk to these guys. Um, but yeah, the defensive line group really stuck out to me. I know Javon Kinlaw, people kind of were already aware of him. He's been on the map as probably a first round pick for a while, but he was impressive to see. Big boy, long, kind of reminded me of a Calais Campbell type almost, but maybe just a little bit thicker. And he was agile. Those first day one practices, he was looking explosive off the drills. His hands were chopping everywhere. He looked like he knew what he was doing. What's your kind of synopsis on him from watching some games with him this year, Jared? This is Javon Kinlaw. He's from South Carolina.
Yeah, for me, I think he was kind of like the name. He's the SEC guy. A
Mhm.
lot of people, I know people gravitated toward him. Everybody's wanted to interview him, talk to him. I think he's got a really good step. I think he could, pretty good, first and second moves. He's not, and I think that's what people like about him the most. He's not just a bulldoze guy, try to
Mhm.
get after it. Obviously, we'll do, you know, 25 or 30 top guys that I think are, after the draft. I can do it prior to the draft, but I think if I did that, it would be a bunch of,
You'd have
the
to
list
do
would
an
be much
update
bigger.
episode after that, so that's a lot of work. I would just
Yeah.
wait till they land somewhere.
Yep. So, and that's why I like it is I like to see where people land, just to give viewers and listeners different guys to focus on. And then I'll obviously pick a guy or two like we did last year, um, that we're happy about. That people don't really know about. Might have went undrafted or something like that. And but the thing is, guys can get hurt during the combine. They can get hurt during the Senior Bowl.
Yeah,
Mhm.
things could change.
There were some guys that
All
did
this
get hurt
stuff.
down
I
there.
mean, a perfect example is Simmons. Last year he got injured towards ACL. A lot of people took him off their draft board. Well, Tennessee did, and they were like, "Yeah, let's go get this dude." And when he finally played, he played well. But back to Kinlaw, I'm a big fan of him. I think size wise, he's kind of prototypical. Which you kind of see out of a guy. I could kind of see him more in a three technique than an edge, to where guys like Anae, he's going to be an edge rusher. So
Oh, yeah.
Kinlaw definitely has that more of a swagger to him. He definitely talks like that way.
He does and he doesn't though. What was interesting, like he was very friendly. Like though some of these guys, I mean, a lot of these guys, you could tell they were just kind of like, I'm ready to like just go play football. And Law was very like open, receptive. Like he was one of the easier guys to talk to. Him and Hamilton both like I felt like I was just talking to like dudes at a bar. Like, hey, what's up? He's like, hey, how's it going? Some of these guys were a little bit more like you could tell like I don't like talking to reporters. I've already thought of this answer kind of situation. Kinlaw was just like, man, like, put your interview up here. Let's go. I was like, all right.
Yeah, you can definitely tell guys that have been interviewed more, and I think that's what it is. This was kind of the process is, these guys are not used to being the camera. They're not the face, and I think that's a real big deal for defensive guys because just like it is in fantasy football, the reason why it's such a big deal for the offensive guys and why they get paid more is because they're the face.
They demand more.
And I think that's where stuff needs to change, and that's where we're big on that. And we're big perpetual guys about this.
Yep.
So,
and
we'll
Jordan was mentioning that down there a lot.
Yeah, I mentioned it to a couple of the guys that we were into fantasy football for defensive players. I was like, I said it to Gibson. I remember for sure. I think I said it to Hamilton. I think I said it to your boy Gallimore as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you definitely did.
And they were like, "Oh, that's cool. That's what's up." I was like, "Yeah, we got some studs in this group right here." And they were like, "Oh yeah."
There really is some good groups. I think the defensive line class is great.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll talk about a couple more guys that I kind of had notes on. Just Jabbar Zuniga, he was a edge guy from the Florida Gators.
He's gonna be solid.
He looked his hand movement from what I was watching. I mean, I'm not a draft scout. I'm just a guy, that happened to be in the right place at the right time too many times. And here I am, but so I'm watching him do his drills, and I mean, he was fat, he was quick. I'll say he was one of the quicker dudes, and he had some pretty violent and like decisive looking hands. Again, I'm not 100%. I'm not a draft scout, but to me, he and Gibson during the day one drills, they looked like they excelled the most, along with Kinlaw, as far as just like looking fluid in their movements. It wasn't very choppy. Maybe they weren't as fast to the spot. I noticed that, they might have taken a little bit longer route. They're a little bit longer too. They were a couple of the longer dudes. So it was a little like they're leaning a little bit more where some of these lower set dudes, I mean, they're turning the corner real fast. So that was a couple of things that stuck out to me from them. That was the South group too. And then the North group, and I'm just kind of talking over my day one notes that I'm looking at here, but Gallimore, Jason Strobridge, and Rod Hamilton. Those are the guys that stuck out to me from that North group. And Jared, why don't you tell us a little bit about Neville Gallimore? I know you're a big fan. We mentioned you to him, and he got a big grin on his face when we told him you've been following him since high school. So
yeah, he actually hit me up. I think was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. Because I've been trying to talk to him about doing an interview, kind of like I did with Buzzy last year. If you guys don't know who Buzzy is, it's Curtis Bolton. But yeah, I'm a big fan. I think a good comparison, and as much as people don't want to hear this, is Aaron Donald, because he's a smaller stack guy. He's got phenomenal hands. He's one of the quicker defensive linemen, and I think that's where I was a big fan of him going into it when he was, coming out of high school from Canada. Was an Under Armour or an Army All American Under Armour, and he was a big commit for Oklahoma. He was just a guy that really is kind of just a funny guy. Like, he's always smiling, always seems like he just tries to be the laid back guy.
Yeah, he was one of the interviews.
Yeah, he seemed like a pretty fun interview. Obviously, I watched the video with you guys, and of course, I would have kicked your butt if you didn't interview him. So,
we got his ass down. Believe me, like, it was a lot of work finding him, because I mean, there was a lot of dudes out there, a lot of jerseys, a lot of people. I was like, looked at Steve. I was like, we have to find Gallimore, like, because we only have like X amount of minutes on the field. We have to get to him. I was like, or Jared's gonna
there's 5 or 6 guys I think that really, really made some money at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, there's like people running into you out there.
Oh, I'm sure. But like I said, there's 5 or 6 guys that I think really made money, in this process. Even a couple of years ago, I felt like Michael Gallup got paid because Baker Mayfield and him played well together, right? I mean, they do it from Colorado State. Now, I follow a lot of college football, as you guys know this, but Gallimore definitely made money. Okay,
oh, yeah.
He was a face, but he was in a defense that, let's be real, is trash at Oklahoma. So you kind of have to showcase yourself in a better spot and being in, big colleges, but going to a process where people can actually see you. Where I felt somebody who was a first-round draft pick had a bad combine a couple years ago in Oklahoma is Orlando Brown. Well, that dude went to the Pro Bowl this year. So he had a bad combine, though. He just went in not feeling good, had a bad workout, and he went from a first-round draft pick to a third-round draft pick. Well, the Baltimore Ravens are pretty happy about that because that dude's been starting since he got there. I feel like Gallimore is that guy that you're going to see a plug-and-play on him.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in the right group.
Yep.
Where that is, who knows? He fits in a lot of good systems.
Yeah.
Dallas could be a good one. I would normally say Jacksonville, but they're so deep right now that who knows what they do in free agency. So,
yeah.
I mean, Yannick's going to get paid by somebody if it's not the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah,
Calais Campbell is the face for them.
No, there was one more guy we haven't mentioned yet, Marlon Davidson. He only practiced one day. He ended up getting hurt. But I was watching some film on him, and he really looked fast, and his handwork was really good. I think he really increased his stock there at the what he could perform anyway.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't have any notes on him really, but like you said, it was the day one after.
That's the kid from Auburn, right?
Yeah,
I remember seeing him in a boot the next day.
Yeah, so he actually had a pretty good year. I mean, he's still a young kid. He's only like 21. But I mean, he's 6'3", 285, 290. He played really good for Auburn, and Auburn wasn't great by any means, but he's a solid dude right in the middle, and he's kind of a guy that I thought was going to be one of the premier guys that people were going to go after, like Kinlaw, especially being an SEC guy. He definitely had a lot of face time during at TV. In the season. So I kind of expected him to get a lot of interviews and whatnot. What injury did he have? Do you know?
I actually heard one of the coaches giving him a little shit about it. I guess he just sprained his ankle. He's like, he was helping him hold pads or something. He's like, yeah, you get over here with your little twisted up ankle.
That's hilarious.
Dude, I'll tell you what,
it's fun to listen to those coaches and stuff.
Oh yeah, you pick up on a lot of stuff. I mean, just being around a lot of like conversations. One of the things I thought was really interesting was watching Mike Mayock, the Raiders general manager. He walked right over to Kinlaw when they hit the practice field and was like, "Give me your number." I was like, "Doot, doot, 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 doot." And I was like, "Ooh, what we got going on?"
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is he's almost perfect for them.
I know.
So
That's
one of the first things you sent to me, and I was like, I could totally see him going there.
Yeah,
so
I tweeted about it. They showed a lot of interest in him day one.
Mhm.
They obviously the Raiders had a lot of guys there. I saw more Raiders scouts and Baltimore scouts than anyone there, so that was interesting. At least on the guys I was.
I'm going to upset both of you real
The
quick.
Eagles had a lot of interest in a lot of D linemen and D tackles too.
As they should. I mean,
what you got, Jerry?
The thing is, they need depth at linebacker too. So
they need help a lot of places. The Eagles.
but let's get back to the Raiders. I'm going to upset you real quick. So they had a fan day in Vegas. One of my friends is obviously lives right there in Vegas, so he always gets a lot of stuff. You get one signature per person, and he got who's the two guys that he got?
Max Crosby, Josh Jacobs.
He got Abram and Clean Farrell, and then another buddy of mine who I didn't know he went. He's like, "Hey, I got a surprise for you." Okay, Max Crosby. Boom, shakalaka. So I have a football coming with Max Crosby on it.
Nice.
Which obviously you guys know I've been blowing up on Max Crosby for months. Awesome. So I'm pretty excited about that. That'll be on the wall when we're all said and done.
That's cool.
Yep. I'm gonna talk.
That's a group that I think is tough. So I think they're about as they're going to be good.
When they add, and they're looking to add pieces, so I think they got some. They're going to draft one or two defensive linemen this year, and it's going to be a good situation. But my notes
I got a new coffee cup, guys. I'm sorry I keep flashing it, but my kids bought me a new coffee cup, and
that's awesome.
It's pretty hilarious.
I had in my notes here that like you said, Gallimore. I mean, he looked powerful, agile, and I noticed like he was consistently the quickest off the ball during drills. Like, I mean, he was upright and moving like in sync with the ball almost every snap. So that was good to see. I know that's something that distinguished himself. Strobridge, he was an interesting guy to me because sometimes they had him with the D lineman group, like the edge guys. Sometimes they broke up the tackles and the edge guys, but sometimes they were together. But I saw Strobridge with both groups at different times. So they kind of had him playing outside and inside and outside a little bit. He was from North Carolina. He looked good. And the other guy was Davon Hamilton. He kind of stuck out to me. He seemed pretty like fine. Like he was one of the only guys I noticed the coaches never kind of stopped what they were doing to, correct him or kind of show him something. I saw a couple guys that were critiquing, but I noticed that he would consistently be like, and he was on the Lions coaching staff too, and they were pretty harsh on those guys. So I picked up on that. I noticed that. So I think he did a lot for his stock this week. So him and Gallimore to me look like they might be the best tackles in that group. And then Strobridge looked good too.
Yeah, I would love to know. I mean, I like Strobridge out of North Carolina. Like I've been talking about, I think Hamilton is one of those guys that could really make a move in this draft. Originally he was projected like a 4th or 5th round guy. But I think, like you said, I think Detroit is a good spot for them. I think Detroit's trying to make a lot of moves this year, especially when, it's kind of a year for their head coach because the guy that he was relieving overall has a better record over his first 3 years. So I really want to see where he moves. Obviously, I love him as a coach. I love him, when he was with the Patriots. I think he's the right guy for Detroit. I just think they need time. There's so much stuff that happened around Detroit, with Stafford's wife, and that had to be weighing on the team. So just small stuff like that. I think that they have a lot of moving forward, and I think a guy like Hamilton could be a real asset for them. So it's cool to see, kind of those small-time group guys get in a good look, and Hamilton's one of those guys that I've been interested in to see what he's going to do. Yeah, and I know guys like, we'll get to Wilson soon enough, but I like Hamilton. I think he's going to be solid.
Yeah, he looked good to me. So that was like kind of my day one notes. On day two, the guys that really popped to me again was kind of Bradlee Anae. I watched him a little bit day one, but day two I really focused on him. And I mean, we're going to drop some links in the YouTube video for this later. I'm going to send them to Steve. But one well, Andy Singleton, he was there. He wrote up some nice stuff from, mostly offensive stuff for Expand the Box Score. So we'll put that in here for you guys. But then also we'll put this Dynasty Nerds article I wrote about the IDP side of things. And Bradlee Anae is where I wrote the most words because, man, I mean, just watching him day 2, like, he looked so good. He looked violent. He looked explosive. He looked very
He's savage.
He really impressed you.
And he impressed me from the second I walked up to him in my interview.
I could tell when you walked up to him.
Yeah, but the way he talked, the way he carried himself. But the coaches, I noticed, like, he told me one of the things he said in my interview too, is like, I'm here to be a sponge. And when the coaches were talking to him, I mean, he was locked in. Like, he was probably the most locked in guy there. And like, you could see he was taking everything that they said and like processing it, filing it, and like doing it. And so he stuck out to me a lot. And I really believe, in the game, I told you guys in one of our group messages before the game started, I was like, man, I hope Bradlee Anae gets a sack today. And he ended up getting sacks in back-to-back plays, finished the game with like 3 sacks.
He tore it up.
I think, to me, if we're talking strictly IDP, he's the guy that I'm most interested in from the Senior Bowl exclusively. I think he'll probably be buried in some IDP drafts. He'll probably be like in your rookie drafts, he'll probably be a 3rd or 4th rounder guy that goes depending on where he gets drafted. And I think he's going to have a pretty solid return. I think he's going to be a pretty high floor kind of guy. I didn't realize that he has NFL pedigree too. I mean, his dad apparently played for the Eagles, which he mentioned in our interview. I didn't know that. And a lot of the coaches there, and he even himself, if you guys watch the interview or listen to it, that'll be at the end of this. I'm also going to put it on our YouTube channel separately. I don't want to give too much away, but one of the things he called out was, he said, I'm probably the most polished rusher here. And that showed up.
Yeah, and he's not a guy that likes to brag on himself.
No, like, and he
mentions,
he said those 2 exact things. He's like, I don't like to talk about myself. He's like, but I think I'm the most polished rusher here, and it showed up in a big way. So go check out
3 sacks in the game.
Good ones
against a pretty good offensive line. Those guys aren't snubs, and 1 or 2 of those guys are going to be drafted early. So, he had his way. And we talked about this before, and we talked about before you went up, guys who I thought that could make money, get paid, and Bradlee Anae's that guy. Because he probably went from maybe a second.
I could see him going in the first.
He's a first-round guy. If he didn't show that, if you guys don't understand, that dude's, he's 6'3". I don't know how many. I know you guys were there for weigh-ins too.
He's like 250.
So it's interesting to see how.
And the thing is, he could put on 20 pounds. You know what I mean? And like, just from what I saw, like, he looked very agile. He looked very powerful, but he also looked like his frame is not filled out as much as it could be and will be.
So how tall is he? Is he 6'3" or 6'5"?
6'3".
That's what I thought.
Yeah, he was pretty
tall.
So
6'3", 260. And we could probably say he could probably get to 270.
Okay. I'll just take your word for it, Steve. I thought he was like 6'6" or something, but I don't know. I have my measurements written down, but they're not right in front of me.
Yeah, I don't have them in front of me either. I'm just going off some notes I have in front of me.
The other guy I noticed on that was Joshua Uche from Michigan, right?
Yep.
Jared, Steve, you're from Michigan. He looked like he was a pretty good rusher to me too. He was kind of quick off the ball. He was another one of those guys that the coaches, when they did talk to him, he paid a lot of attention, but it seemed like they didn't critique him a lot, that they were kind of like, you're picking up what we're putting down here pretty fast. And I know he and actually Bradlee combined for a sack in the game yesterday. Pretty cool to see.
Well, everybody thinks that he's another guy that raised his stock in the Senior Bowl. And that's why I love the Senior Bowl, because if you want to talk about a group to get in front of, like you said, there's so many people down there. There's the video you guys have of just you're walking through and hundreds of people right there for media day.
GMs, owners, Bill Belichick was there.
They were talking right in front of us.
Was there just chilling. It was crazy.
He's a big dude. It's going to be interesting where he ends up, if he's going to stay linebacker, if he's going to play linebacker or move him to rush, edge or something, because I think he is versatile enough where he could play linebacker.
Yeah.
So
Well,
consistent.
they kept him with the rush group though pretty consistently, and that was another guy. Well, I guess we're kind of spending a lot of time on the D line, but they did move one of the guys that was an edge guy, Bond.
Mm-hmm.
They moved him to the linebacker group, and I guess we'll talk about it in a little bit. I just want to finish up on these D linemen. Basically, the guys we mentioned are the guys that I was most interested in. I thought they looked the best, and where I focused. Jabari Zuniga, I didn't have a lot written on him, but he stuck out to me a little bit. And Travis Gibson, another guy from Tulsa that I don't know how he helped or hurt his stock this week, but I think that he showcased enough that, he's a guy that's on my radar depending on where he lands. So,
Well, it's funny about Gibson, right? Because he's a small town guy. And did he go to Tulsa?
Mm-hmm.
He's from Tulsa.
He went to Tulsa. That was the school he played for. I thought
So
you mentioned that too. He said, I want to show the guys here that I'm meant to be here. This isn't an accident. He said that in our interview, and I thought he did enough to. He wasn't by any means like the slowest or the least technical guy in any of the groups. He looked like he belonged. So,
Mm-hmm.
and me, I love small town guys. So like taking guys like Adderley out of Delaware last year, I'll always have at least one or two guys in my top 25 that are small town schools or that people don't really know about until after the draft pick. I really should have done Marquise Blair last year before he went in. And Juan Thornhill, obviously I did both in my group, but most people don't even know about them until you talk about them. Gibson is definitely a guy that is moving up boards. I would say he went from undrafted free agent to draftable, by going to the Senior Bowl.
Definitely.
And that's something that he needs to do. But yeah, defensive linemen, obviously, I think that's the biggest group that you're going to see a lot of movers on, and linebackers, you have a lot of tape on. And I think that's why our defensive linemen especially make big moves in this group, or small town schools, players that end up going to the Senior Bowl to become somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Not many people know about Keyshawn Vaughn out of Vanderbilt, but that guy's going to be a good running back in the pros. So,
Right.
And that's why I love the Senior Bowl.
Yep.
And I was so upset that I couldn't go.
And I seen it on a news report down there that they were talking about moving it next year to a new stadium. I think it's still going to be in Mobile, but they're going to.
So they've been talking about that for a while, though.
Have they?
So and I don't know. Well, here's the thing, right? There's a lot of places they could move it to, even just weather-wise, right? So if they
it was cold, and
I'm actually surprised they don't have it somewhere in Texas.
Yeah, it was cold, but I don't care. It still was awesome. We still sat there. We were huddled down, and
that's why they don't want to move it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been there so long. So,
guess
we should talk about the linebacker group. Of these guys, there were several guys down there worth noting. But probably the one that popped the most to me, the two that popped the most to me were Francis Bernard, linebacker out of Utah, and Akeem Davis Gaither, linebacker out of App State.
I know we've been talking about. So I know that I gave you guys a little bit stuff out of Gaither. So obviously, small town guy. App State Appalachian State used to be like the premier Division III school, becoming a Division I, and they completely balled out this year. So they didn't completely fly under the radar. He didn't.
No, people knew who
obviously, I'm big on him. So I know that I know that I sent you guys certain stuff that I like about him.
Mm-hmm.
But the other guy you were just talking about, I'm going through my list too. So Francis Bernard out of Utah.
Yeah.
You kind of knew that some of the Utah guys were going to show up. Their defense was stout this year.
Mm-hmm.
They had 2 bad games, really. I guess you could really say they had 3 bad games. But one thing I didn't like is when you were interviewing Bradlee Anae, the other guy who came up to talk to him, basically kind of trashed Utah. He's like, "Oh, they got stomped or throttled against Texas," and bro, I'm not. Me as a
he's a little hard on him on that one.
Like, I would not have said that to him. That's just not who I am.
Some of those other reporters there, I mean, that guy in particular, he did walk up during our interview and he kind of like joined in the scrum there a little bit, but he did seem like he was trying to evoke some type of emotion out of Bradlee.
And and that's not what it's about. But that's just one that we talked about. I'm not cool with people like that. But Francis Bernard, obviously, I think he's a player. I mean, he definitely looked good during the season. It's kind of cool that you got to see him in person because you guys were in a position where a lot of guys didn't get to see players, throughout the year and getting to, even Jordan will tell you that he wasn't a big college football guy, but I think this really changed you.
Well, right? It just made me realize that I need to focus more attention on it if I want to get ahead. So, but I mean, to me, those two guys stuck out, but Francis Bernard to me was the guy who stuck out the most. He was very vocal in the middle of the field. He was a leader. Like when they were doing drills, when they were doing sprints, when they were doing high steps, when they were doing anything, he was always the first guy done. That stuck out to me immediately. And then the other thing, like I said, was he was always talking. Like when he was on the field, I mean, he was calling out the plays. They were giving him the plays to give the guys. I noticed the coaches immediately trusted him, and he was making plays too. It wasn't like he was just like, I'm, just gonna move around and be loud and people will notice me. Like he was consistently one of the better linebackers that I saw there. He was, he had a lot of good tackles, stops. He was good in the coverage drills. He was one of the better guys in the coverage drills. I saw him, miss a couple plays, but I saw him make a lot more than most of the guys there. He, showed versatility sideline to sideline. He wasn't afraid to come up, and push the line a little bit. So to me, he looked like a guy that he wasn't even on my radar before going down there. And now I'm definitely going to be looking at paying a lot of attention through the rest of draft season where how he does in the combine, where he gets drafted. Any news or reports that come out, any scouting reports that come out about him, I'm going to be reading and seeing what other guys are saying about him. I thought it was interesting. I asked, because everybody's there watching and, on Twitter, a couple guys were talking with the linebackers on Twitter, scouts, and I mentioned, did you guys pay attention to 13, Francis Bernard? And I had a lot of the guys were like, nah, I wasn't really paying attention to him. And I was like, well, man, I feel like people need to be watching him. And at the end of the week, the teammates vote who was the toughest guy to play against there. And the South team, he was on the South team, right? I think he was on the South team. Anyway, the team he was on said that he was the toughest linebacker to play against. And I was like, all right, I was on it. That wasn't in my head. That was
Bernard was North, right? And Gaither was South.
Yeah, I think you're right. They were on opposites.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he was voted by the teammates that he was the toughest linebacker to play against. And I mean, I was like, all right, cool. And that was the same side that Bond was on. That's the same side that Cam Brown was on, Penn State linebacker, who also looked pretty good.
Bernard had 45 solos and 40 assists this year. I mean, for an outside linebacker to have 85 tackles in college is pretty stout.
Yeah, well, and they played him at middle linebacker all during practices and stuff. So,
I like that. Really, that's awesome.
Yeah, he looked comfortable. So. And then Gaither, to me, I mean, he seemed like, first off, he was just the most physical. When they did the weigh-ins, I mean, he was just jacked. Dude looked like a beast. And when we hit the field, he looked a little undersized, but I mean, he almost reminded me of a Devin Bush. He was just quick. He was kind of just always where.
Well, I gave you who I think he reminds me a lot of, didn't I?
I don't remember. Who'd you say?
We're just gonna put it out there. I think Jayon Brown.
Oh, you did mention Jayon Brown. Yeah,
Brown, it reminds me a lot of Jayon Brown. I mean, he's got good hands. He's definitely got wheels, but he's cut like a safety playing linebacker. I mean, he's only 225.
Yeah.
So I think he could easily put on 25 pounds if he wants to. Now I don't think he does. I think he gets up maybe 235, 240, but it ain't hurt Jayon Brown a whole lot. I mean, he got injured a little bit this year, but the year before, I mean, he was a 300-point guy in fantasy. So he's a baller. I mean, you could see how much – and Jayon Brown went to the big school. I mean, he went to Notre Dame. This guy went to Appalachian State, who, if you don't know Appalachian State, which you got to be shocked at, I mean, it's especially. I think when Appalachian State really got on to people's radars is a couple years ago when they beat Michigan
Oh, that
first game of the season.
yep, I remember that game.
So
That was
that's
awesome.
what really started getting Appalachian State again, and they just moved into Division One, and to basically run through everybody that they played. They really, I think they had one loss. I mean, they beat South Carolina. You know, they had some tough games this year, and Davis Gaither is one of those guys for sure that you could tell. I bet his excitement of getting to be with the big guys and show that he belongs because he does belong.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a guy that definitely is going to move up charts.
Yeah, I interviewed him too, and these interviews and stuff, guys. We have a bunch. Some of them will be on the end of show. Some of them will be on the YouTube. Some of them will be on Instagram. Some of them might just be on Twitter, just depending on the length. But I did talk to him, and one of the things he mentioned was, he wanted to showcase to the coaching staff there that he could play the middle of the field. That I said, like, what's your big takeaway or what's your big goal? Like, Monday rolls around next week. What do you want to have accomplished this week? And that was kind of the thing he harped on was, he's like, I played outside linebacker. He's like, I want to show them that I can play inside linebacker and I can be, a productive linebacker in that spot.
I mean, he had a good year. I mean, he had 14 and a half tackles for loss and 5 sacks this year.
Yeah, he was. So he looked good on the field too. I had a couple of videos. I had one I posted on Twitter of him getting a tackle for loss. So, and they don't play a lot of snaps. So, anything that happened out there to me kind of stood out because a lot of these drills are happening. You're getting 5 chances and that's it. So it's who's showing up on these 5 snaps and then we're doing something else and we're doing something else. So he showed himself a couple of times. That was just the one time I got it on video to be fairly capable. So Malik Harrison was another guy that kind of stuck out, but mostly just because he was really, really big. He was a big-ass linebacker. He was 6'2", 246, and they had him in the middle of the field. He didn't really have any plays that popped to me, but he just looked like the kind of guy that you don't want to see standing in the middle of the field when you're about to run up the middle. I know in the game, too, he had an interception, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, so that's good for him. Good helped his stock. Zach Bond, they had him playing middle linebacker. Apparently he was an edge guy at Wisconsin, and he just looked, to me, he looked out of sorts. He got beat every time he had to cover a tight end that I saw, like every single time. Eventually they were actually having him do plays where they were having him cover tight ends. And I saw at one point the coaches were like, they just said, like, come rush. They wanted to see him, try to blitz instead, like during that drill. It's like, sounds like they've closed the door on him covering this tight end on this play. So he might end up being a guy that's just a 2-down linebacker in the middle of the field rookie year, if that's where teams end up putting him. But he does have some edge versatility, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. And he was a guy that a lot of people wanted to talk to, too. A lot of the media were kind of focusing on him, I noticed, after practices, before practices, on Twitter. So I guess that's the Wisconsin vibe.
I know that I had one question I wanted to ask you about. A guy, I don't know if you got to talk to him or got to see any of him, AJ Green from Oklahoma State. I had a lot of people asking questions. He's the cornerback.
Yeah.
I don't know if he even practiced.
He did. I saw him a little bit, but I didn't spend a lot of time watching the defensive backs. I've been a little because there was a couple of guys I wanted to watch, in particular Jeremy Chin from Southern Illinois University, which is my home school, SEMO's rival. So it's just a couple hours away. So I thought it was cool to see a guy from, our conference, OVC, out there, small school guy. And he was one of the better defensive back safeties, that was out there. He was tall, lanky, but athletic and fast. And he looks like another guy. He could probably put on 10, 15 pounds and, be a Jamal Adams type. Like he looked the part of a safety that you like. Long arms, long legs. He got low when he was running. I posted a couple of videos of him. Didn't watch him a whole lot. Like I said, I focused mostly on the D line and then the linebackers. But I did, when I was watching the defensive backs, it was him and that Kyle Duggar kid too. He also looked pretty decent. He flashed the few times that I was paying attention to the defensive backs. So there might be some IDP options right there for some people. I got asked about Lamar Jackson. He was a cornerback that was there. Like I said, I didn't watch a whole lot, so I missed out on him. And then the AJ Green, I did see him play a couple snaps, but I wasn't like trying to critique it or anything. I was just kind of just an observer at that point. So, but that's kind of the guys at the Senior Bowl that I focused on that stuck out to me that I think are, potentially have some IDP relevance, as rookies even. And I wouldn't be surprised.
I like. You brought up Kyle Duggar real quick. Yep. Being you want to talk about a small town guy that is definitely moved up a radar because he went to the Senior Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously he got an invite because he was on somebody's radar, right? I know Matt Miller has definitely talked about him a little bit, which is always nice when he's in. Whether you like or hate Matt Miller, he definitely is in the face, right? The NFL knows this dude. You don't get a check mark on Twitter if you ain't somebody. So it's going to be interesting to see where he goes because we're talking about a guy who, he went to Lenoir-Rhyne University,
mm-hmm.
right? And it sounds like he had a really good week overall.
Yep.
Yeah, he looks stout.
I know when he got invited, somebody asked him, "Hey, you got plans on January 25th?" And like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "How would you like to become in the Senior Bowl?" He was like, "Be great." He's got to be the smallest school guy to be there, right? Being a D2 guy. So, and it sounds like he had a really, really good week, which means he's just going to get paid because he was on nobody's radar, right? I would think.
Yeah, I remember I had never really heard of him, but he put himself on.
Well, yeah, went to Division II school. Not many Division II schools get a chance to play in this anyway. So you've definitely done something, to get in, a group that, where they're talking about you and Javon Kinlaw in the same sentence. Because that happened. There's an article about both those guys, who took very different paths to get to the NFL, process.
Yep.
But we're talking about a guy who's nobody, but he's a safety that's probably moving up. He reminds me, if you want to talk about a guy from last year, he's a lot like Juan Thornhill. Juan Thornhill played every game this year until he got injured right before the playoffs. So obviously, Juan Thornhill, you're a big KC guy, but this guy played running back, safety, cornerback, defensive back, will linebacker at times. So it's funny because there's a thing. He went to the most obscure spot of any person at the school, but once the LSU cornerback got withdrew, Fulton, they pulled him in. So, and let's be real, it might have changed his entire life because some dude withdrew from the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. That's what you like to see.
Big opportunity.
That's the stuff that I want to see.
The thing you don't realize too is like, even though these NFL teams might be, scouting and separate, all these guys talk to each other. So if somebody out there is not paying attention to Kyle Duggar or their team isn't looking for a safety, but he might have noticed him, he's talking to a guy who's specifically there looking for safeties and might want to talk to him about that, and vice versa. So these guys, they're getting insight into players, touching, seeing them, feeling them, talking to them, but they're also they're being put through 1,000 filters at once. There's 5,000 guys there, just watching all this stuff. So, maybe 60 of them are watching him, and they're, you're getting a broken down opinion, a boiled down opinion of a guy like, is this guy really the real deal? And we can figure that out here because there's enough people here that know what they're looking at and talking about. So, yeah, he definitely looks like he might have pushed himself up to, a day 2 guy. And he looks like he's the real deal. So that's what the power.
That's pretty awesome, though. To be somebody that nobody knows about, and he's not a small guy. He's like 6'2", 220. To be on nobody's radar, to possibly being a day 2, day 3 draft pick from this, small Division II school. That's the story that's a 30 for 30 story waiting to happen. You know what I mean? So, especially if he's drafted day 2 or day 3, because you know how, like a couple years ago, Mike Mayock would always talk about somebody. Oh man, this is the guy that's moving up draft boards, and now Mike Mayock's a GM. You don't think people aren't looking at him now? And that's what it's all about. And that's why I'm super jealous you guys have to go.
Yeah, overall, it was an awesome experience. Like I said, learned a lot. Got to see some of these players up close and personal. Got to, just be around a lot of NFL guys. I mean, we went out and we met a bunch of guys in downtown Mobile one evening. We went out. I mean, it's a very, very real, very raw atmosphere there. I've enjoyed it a lot. I know Steve did too. I think the other guys there, guys from the Devi Delight podcast, shout out to those guys, Ricky and Chris Stoops. You guys, if you're not listening to their show, it's pretty good. They focus on the offensive guys. Andy Singleton, you can follow him on Twitter. He's always dropping some good stuff. He does baseball too, if you're into that. So, like I said, we're going to drop the links to the articles written by the guys from Expand the Boxscore in the comment section below on the YouTube. And the Bradlee Anae interview should be at the end of this episode, and we'll put that up other places today too. So, but yeah, that's kind of my overall takeaway from the Senior Bowl. I think, the draft process really has just begun. We got the Super Bowl next week or here in a few days, and once that happens, it's really draft season. People are really going to start honing in, circling the combine, and getting their notes all together. So nice to have a jump on that.
Do you remember where the NFL draft is this year?
It's in Las Vegas.
Oh, that's right.
Looks like it's going to be a shit show. I was talking to some Scots. I'm like, man, so many guys are going to get arrested.
I mean, Vegas is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
I don't think that's happening.
No, not during draft week. What happens in Vegas is going to be all over ESPN 30 seconds later.
I don't think you can say that anymore with social media and everything anymore.
Yeah. But
what happens anywhere is all over everywhere.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go this year. Obviously, you guys know I'm really big. It's the end of April, which, I retire. I'll leave California March 27th. To somewhere April 1st, which means I'm going to start driving and get back near you guys, which will be really nice when we do shows because I'm not up at 5 a.m. So, that'll be different. But I don't know if I'm going to go this year. I'm definitely, without a doubt, going next year. I will definitely have a much clearer plate than I do this year. So it'll be interesting to see what we do. Obviously, we're going to do a mock draft show. Which will be fun. One year, and I think it was 2009 or maybe 2011, I picked exactly the entire first round, even the trade. So, which I was pretty excited about. Something different. I've never done it since then. It's the only year I ever did it, but it was nice because one of my friends like, hey, do you realize you picked everybody in the first round? I'm like, didn't really think about it. I always seem to go to a bar with somebody and like, hey, this is what I think should happen. It's somebody who was talking. They were interviewing the Cleveland Browns were interviewing for a new GM, and their head coach is like, I don't want this guy. And the main reason you don't want this guy is like, well, this guy passed on Carson Wentz, Deshaun Watson, and Patrick Mahomes. So if that was your GM and he passed on those three guys to get some bum, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
So
some bum.
That's what happened, and I know that Cleveland's head coach was adamant about not having a certain person. So, But it's that's our show for the day. I know Steve's got a lot of work to do here in a little bit because he's got a bunch of stuff to put at the end of the video. So check the YouTube video, a couple hours, and it should have the Bradlee Anae interview, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and then the
Guys,
rest
I appreciate you. I'm glad you guys got to go down. I'm glad you guys were hitting me up the entire time, so that was fun for me just to bounce back and forth.
Yep. It was a good trip. I was happy to go. Make sure you check out Expand the Boxscore. That's who hosts our show. Give them a look. That's who took us down there. So we had a good time. We learned a lot, and excited to see what the 2020 season's got for us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and until next week, let's go.